I hereby call the regular Board of Education meeting this October 8th, 2024 to order at 7 p.m. Please silence or turn off all electronic devices. And would you guys mind coming up and help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance? That'd be great. Please rise.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I thought I was going to forget it, so I'm glad you guys do.
Okay, Mrs. Johnson, could you please call?
Bianchini.
Here.
Camardo.
Here.
Friedland.
Here.
Grimpy.
Here.
I'm here. Johnson. Fistor.
Here.
And Ronstadt.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, next up is the consent agenda. Looking over the consent agenda, are there any items that a member would like to remove and further discuss, or is there a question or clarification? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda in its entirety as presented, which includes the following: Board of Education meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024, Board of Education closed session meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024, personnel report, actual payroll, bills and checks, and the travel report.
So moved.
Second, moved by Friedland, second by Camardo. Could you please call roll?
Yes. Grimpy.
Yes.
Ronstadt.
Yes.
Friedland.
Yes.
Camardo.
Yes.
Bianchini.
Yes.
Fistor.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passed.
Thank you. Next up is the RTEA comments. Bob, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening. On behalf of the River Trails Education Association Executive Board and the entire membership, I'd like to thank the Board of Education and the administration for the excellent ongoing working relationship that we continue to have. Also on behalf of the staff of Indian Grove, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for approving the work on Indian Grove that's going to go forward, for moving forward on that. That is really going to pay dividends for both the health and well-being and the teaching and learning for the staff and students for years to come for Indian Grove. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next up is visitor comments. This time, I'd like to recognize any members of the audience who approach the board with a comment or question by completing a visitor comment form. Please do note that the board and administration typically does not respond, and if you wish for a response, please provide your name, number, or email for a member of the board or administration to get back to you. Speakers are encouraged to limit their time for others to participate. A 3-minute time limit per speaker with an overall 60-minute maximum for visitors' comments per our current policy. Okay, hearing none, let's move on to board communications. This is an open agenda for any board member to share. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Please.
Okay, so last night, the River Trails Education Foundation had a meeting, which for those of you first timers or need a quick refresh, the Education Foundation was set up, I don't know, 25 years ago. Bob, I think your mom was the president for some time. And the sole purpose of the foundation is to give all students in the district an opportunity to experience and be a part of the fine performing arts. And that's usually coming in the way of a funded field trip to a play throughout the school year. And I think we've got our first one coming up in October, and it's between October through March. Different grades, all the schools. And so last night they passed the resolution, which as a silent member, I sadly approved, to fully fund all of the student paid tickets for this coming school year. So it's a great foundation. That's what the plant sale is in the spring, and the resale in the holiday time is to keep getting back to this ongoing evergreen endowment, and this is how they spend their funds. So last night was a good approval for all of our students in the district.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Had a chance to attend the Euclid Walkathon, which was a walkathon, but also like a big obstacle course. It was really cool. We had a DJ out and just seeing all the kids run around and good participation from the neighborhood. It was just a really fun event. And it was just cool seeing all the parent involvement and a bunch of tired old kids. Yeah, go ahead.
I also attended Walkathon, and I echo everything you said. I think when we were there Friday morning, we raised over $3,500 for the Euclid PTC. And so I think it's a really fun event. It's unique, it's fun and exercise, and you get kids to turn around with music playing and jump over things, and they are very tired at the end of it. And then I also attended another Indian Grove PTC event at Picasso Night, which was painting. They bring in artists that help kids paint in canvases, and they make very cool, spooky trees and birds. So it's really fun.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was able to communicate with our ACTEC program via email to hear that our ACTEC program was recognized as a gold level facility, which is the highest form of early childhood quality in education. So we're very excited about that. I'm very familiar with the process, and it is intense. They look at everything from administration to how many animals you have in your block area. So to be considered a gold facility with the quantity of classrooms that ACTEC has is amazing. So to see that over at Euclid School and part of our early childhood program, I'm just so excited for that. And then the North Coast dinner, which many of us attended, was just very inspirational. Very excited to be able to meet with other board members from other boards and share a very fancy dinner that was just amazing. The chef was wonderful. Just a great evening of socialization, education, and meeting with some of our representatives about new legislation, and that communication was just amazing as well. So we're very blessed to be able to do that.
Go ahead, please.
And then two things at Euclid too, the ice cream social, which took place like almost right after our last meeting.
Yeah.
So I always feel like I'm never sure if I said it last time, but no. So that was absolutely wonderful. It was great to see everybody come out. It was almost kind of like a beginning of the school year. And obviously we only made an appearance. I don't know who was in there, but boy, I was like, it takes a lot to get in there, and especially on a hot day. And then we also had the donuts with grown-ups, and I believe, even though my family was not able to attend, but everyone that talked about it said it was absolutely wonderful just to be able to socialize in the morning and the kids get to play, and it was a great day that day. So just thanks to the PTC for putting on a lot of events too.
Great. I love how busy everybody was. All right, next up. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
God, I think recess here on the north playground,
All good?
so much fun. Recess is not long enough. Huh?
You didn't just say recess, it's right there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I played recess with the kids. If we can extend recess by another 5 minutes, then.
We weren't supposed to win every game.
All-time quarterbacks are going to lose. Love that event. And I think we did in the spring last year too.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna do two this year.
Yes. 3 on the 4.
Anybody else? Great. All right, let's move on to new business. And this is the Indian Grove School update. Mr. Feldman, you're up first.
I'm going to introduce you. While I'm getting myself ready, I would like to also plug that we have our pizza bingo night happening on Friday. So if anybody would like to call some bingo on Friday, please stop on by. All right, so this evening, our student showcase is going to be focused around,
Flip it to the on switch on.
is going to focus around our art program and some of the recent revisions that happened with the kindergarten through 5th grade scope and sequence that really focuses on anchor standards in creating, presenting, responding, and connecting to art. Mr. Feldman is going to come up. He is our art teacher now for almost a year. He was a mid-year hire last year, and he has been fantastic in connecting with the kids and really getting the building interested in all the things that are happening and the building looking great. If you have a chance tonight, I would highly suggest walking around the hallways to see all the cool student art that's up on the wall. So I will turn it over to Mr. Feldman.
Hello, thank you, the board, for having me here today. I'm so excited to share what we're going to be talking about and doing in art with adults. So, first and foremost, in art and music this year, me and Katie Van Eck are aligning our curriculum theme to follow the idea of art or music around the world, looking at like different areas, different artists from around the world, different cultures, that we have different art styles around the world. And some of those project highlights, a lot. I tried to limit myself, but I got too excited. So for first grade, we'll be doing clay. Third grade, we'll be doing clay. And fifth grade, we will also be doing clay for sure. If I still have clay, second grade and fourth grade, we'll be doing clay. But I do have some second graders here that are going to tell us a little bit about the project we just finished up. Can we come up?
Hi, my name is Marisa, and I made a building with a clock tower and a bank with a hotel and a roller coaster, and there's like a little merry-go-round for like little kids to play on. My name is Gigi, and we used pencil, Sharpie, and oil pastel. My name is Val. We did this really cool reflection thing where it's reflection of the buildings and the reflection of the sky. It faded out. It fades it out, kind of.
The coolest part about these is they look beautiful in the normal light, but if you take a black light, they then glow. Some more things. So third grade will also be doing black light haunted houses. We just started that one. Fourth grade's going to be creating these pumpkins, but when you have the black light, there are jack-o'-lantern faces on it. At the end of the year in the spring, we're going to have a whole school art show the same night as I believe it's our first grade chorus concert. And you'll see all of that artwork from our students looking at all the different areas around the world. The other thing I would like to talk about today is about our Glow Forge. If you had the chance to see me printing toast over there, and if you sat down there with a pencil, I engraved hashtag IG art on there, so you don't forget. But here is a little bit more information about
Meet Glowforge, the 3D laser printer. Start with a design that you download or create. Choose from dozens of materials, even recycled cardboard. The laser cuts and engraves your design. It's precise to the width of a human hand, so it's easy to assemble remarkable things. Use your Mac, PC, or tablet to drag your design into place. Print from organic material like wood, leather, paper, cloth, even chocolate. Sometimes you don't want to design from scratch. Print from the Glowforge catalog. You can resize and personalize to make it perfect for you. Your design can be as simple as a photo. Your favorite apps like Photoshop and Illustrator can print directly to create physical objects. Glowforge cuts holes with such precision that you can lace up leather like a shoe. If you draw a material with an ordinary pen, dual cameras create a 3D image of your material and your drawing. Glowforge will engrave and cut directly over the ink. Then it's as easy to make a dozen copies as it is to make just one. Glowforge has autofocus that can follow curved surfaces like this MacBook. Cameras automatically identify what you put inside, so it's safe to personalize your laptop with designs from the catalog or your own photos and text. You can make a daily essential, a unique gift, a thriving business, or you can just make lunch. You don't have to be a clothing designer, an artist, or a pastry chef. You can build a mansion without being an architect. Glowforge is a tool that's easy enough and safe enough for anyone to use. Unlike this drone with rubber band Gatling guns. We've been working hard to make something amazing for you. I'm Dan Shapiro, and this is Glowforge. Our team has built everything from cell phones to search engines, but this is something different. I have one in my home. I want you to have one too.
So that's just a little bit about what our students' experience in art is going to be like this year. Fifth grade, hopefully, will be making laser engraved boomerangs with their own design on there. Maybe in the spring we'll do a day where we go throw them out. Thank you for having me tonight and hearing about our art program.
As I told Mr. Feldman earlier, so I have a sixth grader, and he kind of set the bar pretty high for the art program. And I don't know if the middle school is matching where he set the bar. I hear about it often that, why couldn't Mr. Feldman go to sixth grade? So, great job. I just want to know, have you used that in the past and brought it with you? Not literally, but.
So I student taught at a STEM school, so a lot of my training was like the design process. And we didn't have one of those, but my mentor teacher taught me about it, and she wanted one, she craved one, so then I got it and texted her. So yeah, that's how I heard about it, and like immediately as soon as I watched that video, I saw the endless possibilities for our students.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Feldman? We'd like to pause for a minute and let the kids, if they want, they can grab a cupcake or cookie. We're going to take a little bit of a break so they can enjoy it. You guys are welcome to stay after the break for the rest of the meeting. You certainly don't have to, but you are welcome. And we'll take a 5-minute break. All right, then next up is Mr. Timmons with his Indian Grove update. Mr. Timmons, the floor is yours.
All right. First, I just want to say thank you for coming onto our turf tonight and allowing us to present all the things that are happening in the school. We really like and appreciate this opportunity every year. So last year, we started with this slide. Figured that was a bright spot to start this year too. You can never see this slide enough times. So thinking about how we are purposely working to align everything that we're doing within the district. Starting at the bottom, that's core values of belief, but really on a yearly basis, we're focused in that middle spot, the annual district goals and how those influence our building goals, and then how that influences eventually what happens in the classroom and what we expect out of students. So the district goal that was presented to us from Jody this year, Dr. Magerly, was to simultaneously strengthen and anchor our existing practices using those 4 areas on top. So like every year, our starting point is the district focus. I appreciate this focus this year because we don't really have anything that we're doing that's brand new to us. Last year we had the Eureka Math program. The years before that we were really still digging into the school-wide literacy program. This year, when coming up with our goals, every year we tend to follow the same process of planning first, implementing, assessing, and reflect. And when we meet in June, we're usually going over the reflection piece. Having that consistency in the curriculum and instruction for this year, not having anything new, really allows us to dig deeper into that reflection and that planning for this year, and to go deeper into what we're doing to make sure that everything that we're doing is backed by research, is supported by the data that we're collecting, and is in alignment with the goals and where we want to be and where we want our students to be. So with our focus area this year, you're actually going to see a lot of overlap between the work that we're doing and the work that Euclid is doing, and even some of the work that's happening at the middle school. Mr. Hinkle, Mrs. Daly, and I are all very much moving in the same direction with a lot of what's happening aligned with the district goals. And I think that the idea really is integration. We're trying to take the things that we're already doing and figure out how it fits together to best, boost student learning, to boost student growth. This is something that is familiar to us. It should look familiar to all of you, because the head ready goal was a lot of my presentation last year. And then the heart ready goal is things that Carrie had presented, Dr. Cohen had presented at the end of last year and over the summer about the SEL curriculum that's happening. So our goal this year is to figure out how all of these things weave together so that it doesn't seem like they're silos. It seems seamless in our implementation. Focusing first on that heart ready side. I mentioned earlier that we're not doing anything new this year. That is technically true, which is my favorite kind of true. We've been using the second step lessons in the district for a really long time, much longer than I've been here. Last year, Dr. Cohen and her committee brought a recommendation to you to refresh our second step program with the new digital tools that existed for that. Those tools, while similar, the updated curriculum offers more supporting resources, and we've done a lot of work on the front end to plan for the implementation and how all adults in the building can really support and reinforce the social emotional learning. Last year, we also had the opportunity, a traditional pilot might be a small group of teachers using the materials. The pilot for the second step resources was available to everybody. So anybody could have signed up at any point last year to try out the new materials, and we did have a number of teachers that did sign up and were using these last year before it was officially adopted and brought into this year. So again, it's not new, but it's newish. So a lot of the work that we started to do on the front end, like I said, we really wanted to plan out the year. We outlined what the year could look like following the program recommendation of doing one lesson per week. And this is a sequencing doc that we use district-wide. So this is something that Prairie Trails is using for their implementation of the second step, and Euclid is using for their implementation as well. Really, the idea here was to be intentional about where we're putting each of the units. Really, starting at the beginning of the year with a focus on relationships and expectations, which is what we do normally, but now there's specifically there for everyone to kind of see and to follow along with. Next, we place the bullying unit in the front of the year. This is something that we've done in the past, but we used to do it later on. I think typically it happened in January or February. We noticed that we needed to get this information to kids and to families a lot earlier in the year, because there was things that were happening before the unit that we knew that if the kids had the tools, the kids had the strategies, they would be able to handle it better. So we purposely moved that up to the beginning of the school year. There was also a lot of new state mandates that have come out recently related to bullying, about things that we have to do specifically to follow up with investigating, with communicating, and reporting. So we wanted to make sure that we got out on the front end so that, again, everybody knew the difference between being rude, being mean, and what actually constitutes as bullying. We just wrapped up that unit last week, and we started our first digital unit, which is the growth mindset and goal setting unit. That's going to happen from now until conferences. So kids are going to be working on setting goals and what they need to do to get to those goals, which ending at conferences is the perfect time, because that is an opportunity then to share those goals at conference time. The unit after that is emotion management, and the timing works out that that will start right after conferences and go up until winter break. When we come back, there'll be opportunities that first week to reestablish our routines, our expectations, to rebuild those relationships, and then we jump into empathy and kindness in January and February. The timing happened to work out really well with that, where that unit will end just in time for a random acts of kindness week in February. Then we take a little bit of break for state testing, and we jump in again after spring break with problem solving. One of the cool things about the second step lessons is how they build on each other year after year, so it spirals, very similar to how our math curriculum spirals. So there are ideas and things that they will continue to build on, and skills that they continue to build year after year. On the bottom of the document, if you can see that, each of the units is also aligned with one or more of the CASEL competencies. CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And these are the big picture competencies that make it easy to support the main ideas of the lessons in all areas of the building. The lessons themselves don't always seem like they are aligned to each other, but they all relate to one of these 5 competencies. So, for example, one of the things that we're doing building-wide, Ms. Naples and I support the social emotional learning by reiterating and reinforcing the main points on the morning announcements. This week in particular, the first grade lesson was about paying attention. The 5th grade lesson was about picking challenging yet attainable goals, but they both align to the CASEL competencies of self-awareness and self-management, so that's what our message was. Those big picture ideas also made it easier to create these cheat sheets for all the adults that aren't the ones that are necessarily delivering the lessons, but that can support the learning with social emotional learning across the building. So we made one of these for each of the units that we gave to all of the teacher assistants, the specialist teachers, the anybody else that might be working with students that might not know the exact content of all the lessons, have the main points, the language used, and the strategies used so that they can use and reinforce them. The final piece that we've added for this year aligns with the district goal of using data to guide our decisions. Historically, we really haven't had anything in place that measures the student's response to our specific social emotional curriculum and instruction. We've always measured it more indirectly, either through discipline data, through intervention group data, or more recently through Panorama. Staff in various roles met a couple times over the summer to create these assessments that would help give us more of that real-time data related to social emotional learning. Each unit has a pre-test and a post-test, which helps us measure where students were starting, where they ended at the end of the unit, and helps us plan for other supporting activities. It's essentially, every unit is turned into a mini SLO cycle. Shifting over to Head Ready goal, which is continue to build on and strengthen the work that I shared from last year. Our school improvement team has really taken the lead with this one, which was identifying, last year was identifying the essential elements of learning and defining what each of those look like and sound like when they're implemented in our classrooms. Those 4 elements were pretty general. So in order for us to narrow our focus, the school improvement team started this year by digging into our building data from last year. We started here with these parameters. These are performance targets that I've used for the last couple of years just to keep track of how we're doing as a building. The targets themselves are pretty ambitious, and they give a decent mix of achievement goals and growth goals just to kind of keep a pulse on how we're doing. Before we actually dug into the data, we spent some time talking to get our mind in the same spot so that when we're looking at everything, what is it that we're focused on? So we wanted to make sure that we were focused on the things that we actually had control over. What did we see and how can our response look? How do we want that to change our outcomes? These 2 prompts are another wonderful resource that were shared with me by Ms. Daly. They helped us look for those correlations between the things that we did last year and the outcomes that we did notice in the data. With this in mind, we did start to dig into everything with a focus on what brought us success last year and how our knowledge of those experiences can be applied to what we want to do this year. So I'm not going to go through all of the data, but this is where we started. This is how we compared to those performing targets from 2 years ago to last year. And right away, the celebration for me is that we're increasing the number of targets that we're hitting. Progress happens slowly over time. So 2 years ago, we hit 10 out of those 22 targets. Last year, we hit 12 out of the 22. The big piece that we started to notice here, and then even more so when we were digging into the Ames Web data for first grade, math, reading and math data, IAR reading and math data, and our 5 essentials data, was that the big jumps that we saw in the area of math, which is something that we talked about over the summer. From even looking at the growth data that we had 2 years ago, we had about, it's so tiny on here. 39.8% of our students were meeting their MAP targets in growth for math. Last year, that jumped up to 77%. We saw increases in reading growth as well from 48 to 53, not as dramatic as what we saw in the math. So the conversation that we had really started a rich conversation. Or the data itself started that rich conversation. Those prompts really helped us think about what it was specifically that we were doing in math that might have led to that, and how we can recreate that in other areas. As an admin team, we've spent a lot of time over the years on root cause analysis. That's typically used to find all the potential reasons for a problem, but we were able to use it here to figure out the reasons for our success, specifically in math. And teachers identified how the Eureka program is structured, from the way the lessons are planned to the way the learning continues to build on prior knowledge and the skills throughout the grade levels, and also the focus on conceptual understanding and frequent opportunities for students to talk and explain their thinking as the key difference makers. So with that in mind, our focus turned into the things that we want to improve. Although we did see that modest growth, that modest jump in the reading data, it wasn't anywhere near what we saw in the math. So we went through the process of brainstorming what our literacy instruction could look like if we were to infuse the high level practices that we were seeing out of the math program. This led us to the idea that comprehension is the equivalent to conceptual understanding in math. And just the idea that if we want students to really understand what they're reading and what they're doing in the comprehension, to comprehend the way that they're comprehending in math, we needed to have students talk more and eventually write more to explain their thinking about what they're doing. That actually fed in really well with one of the elements of learning that we had talked about last year, which is the idea of discourse. For us, that encompasses both speaking and writing. When we were looking at the 5 essentials data, we also noticed that the teachers, rated the quality of student discussions as being a weak point in the survey. The components that went into, there was a couple of questions that went into the quality of student discussion category, had to do with students building on each other's ideas during discussion, using data and text references to support their ideas, providing constructive feedback to each other, and participation and respect in discussions. That last one was the highest out of all of them, but there are things with the rest of it that we saw in the math program that we want to figure out how to recreate that within the literacy world as well. So starting with that focus on discourse would eventually lead to students thinking about their thinking, which is that metacognition piece, and increasing their confidence and control over what they're learning, which is that agency piece. So it's really kind of the gateway into our learning elements. So our focus for this year, which is the same as Euclid, the same as River Trails Middle School, is the idea of discourse, specifically comprehension through discourse. Our ultimate goal is moving past just knowing stuff to being able to actively use that knowledge for a greater purpose. And I liken it to the joke about tomatoes. We know that tomatoes are a fruit. That's the surface knowledge. The deep knowledge is knowing that it doesn't belong in a fruit salad. When we think about reading comprehension, we know that reading comprehension is the product of word recognition and language comprehension. So right now, we're really focused on strategies that we can do to build that language comprehension that will eventually get us to deeper thinking, which will eventually get us to deep reading, deep writing. This is work that's also being supported through our Coach with the Eureka program. That is something that we are continuing with this year, that support from Great Minds. We had a meeting maybe a month ago-ish, a couple weeks ago, where we identified 3 areas that we wanted to really focus on from that aspect, from the work that we're doing with the Eureka Coach. And these 3 aspects now have become universal across the school. So we actually spent time in teams today going over these 3 things, the key strategies that we can use and we want to see in each classroom that really hit on building the environment, offering the supports that will eventually lead to students being able to elaborate and explain on what they're saying and what others are saying around them. We have our first walkthrough with our Eureka Coach on Monday. We're doing walkthroughs at here and at Euclid. So starting here on Monday, then Euclid again in a couple weeks, and then another round again in December. So the purpose of those is to kind of gather our preliminary data, kind of see our starting point. It'll be with Corey, our Eureka Coach, with Christy, with the admin and the coaches of each of the elementary buildings. Really just kind of seeing what are we doing right now, and then being able to tailor that support that we're getting from Eureka. Speaking of walkthroughs, that's also a key component of the feedback that we want to be able to give to our teachers too. You know, we do stuff through the evaluation process, but those only happen a couple times throughout the year. The walkthroughs that Ms. Naples and I would do, we want to be more frequent. So our goal is to get into every classroom at least once every 2 weeks. And last year in our school improvement team, we created a walkthrough form related to the 4 areas, the 4 elements of learning. We've really narrowed that down this year, just looking at and focusing on the idea of discourse. So what are the things that we're seeing that are great? What are some feedback that we would have more on that frequent basis that could just be kind of quick things as opposed to being the full evaluation process. There's a lot of excitement over the idea of a common building goal because it is something that we can see everywhere and it's something that applies to everybody. There's been a lot of good ideas and suggestions that have come from the staff about how we can continue to support that. We just had a meeting last Thursday where Alicia came in to present the tech tools that we already have that are aligned to that. We have meetings with the student services team, the student services group that can help us related to this too. So, you know, I do think that we are really, you know, firing on all cylinders and we're going in the same direction. All right, so that's the road we're on. I'm excited about what we're doing and what we have planned coming up, and I'm excited to come back in June to report on our progress.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? I actually have 2. I'll jump in. When you talk about your yearly targets, what is your goal for a target this year, seeing the growth that you did see from 12 to 14?
In terms of the student data?
Yes.
So those yearly targets stay the same each year.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the target comparison. One more up. Let's be past it. There you go. There you go.
So, you know, I think looking at last year, we hit 2 more than we did the year before. I think that if we can keep that clip going, I think that'd be a nice and steady pace. I mean, obviously my goal is to hit all of them every year, but you know, I think that as long as we continue in the right direction. That's the main thing, and continue to build on the momentum that we had. So making sure that we're still seeing the gains that we're seeing in math while also adding into the reading piece as well. Each of these kind of measures something a little bit different. So, I think that one of the things that I've seen traditionally is that we are hitting the balanced and targeted growth pretty consistently. The students that start the year below the 35th percentile, we're doing a really nice job of getting that caught up. I think the hardest thing that we see happens to be some of the growth stuff, specifically for students that tend to be on that higher end. I think, the last couple of years when I talked about data, I mentioned that our building does skew to the higher end. So growth is harder sometimes with that. So I think that my ultimate goal, I would love to see the growth increasing for everybody equally in that.
Thank you. Go ahead. Anybody else?
I just had a really quick question about the MTSS. So when you have it going to support, and I'm just more curious about it, I don't mean the nitty gritty,
Yeah.
but is that stating that there is enough support or that there is not?
From the brainstorm?
Yeah, from the
Yeah. So the way, and I should have explained my drawing a little bit better, this was my capturing of our conversation through kind of like visual notes.
Yeah.
What you see in the black are the things that we're doing well,
Okay.
that we feel like are successful. What we see in the green are the things that we want to improve on. So while we saw the math growth was a big piece, we felt like there was a lot of support for students within the MTSS process, and we felt like students were really hitting that conceptual understanding piece of math.
Got it, okay.
On the opposite side, reading growth is something that we would like to see more of. We saw some growth, we'd like to see it matching the level of the math growth. The math pacing was a little bit tough last year just because it was the first time that we had done it. So really making sure that we're keeping an eye on the end of the year so that we're getting to where we need to get by the end of the year. And the structure and routine was the piece that was identified as the big thing that was present in the Eureka lessons that they wanted a little more of out of the literacy, the school-wide materials.
Got it. So
Yeah.
that was in reference to curriculum?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
because I saw the MTSS and then I got it, okay.
Yeah, so the structure and routine, they really enjoy how the Eureka lessons are laid out with the different pieces and elements to them, but also there are specific things that you need to hit, and there are specific things that you have a choice of doing. Whereas the school is a little bit tougher because it's more open-ended. And sometimes when something is too open-ended, you kind of get stuck in a rut of trying to find the right thing as opposed to finding the thing that works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it, thank you.
Yeah.
The math scores are incredible. I've never seen a year-over-year jump like that. Do you attribute that mostly to or where do you attribute that to? Is that the curriculum, the staff, the population?
So unfortunately, we had a couple of different variables at play last year, so it's hard to narrow it down to one thing. I saw the same thing when I saw that. I was looking for every reason about why that was wrong, which is probably not like the happy thing or the positive thing to do, but I wanted to make sure that it was legit. So two different changes that we saw last year. One was the math curriculum. The other was the change in the algorithm and the math score. They're more related. The way that the questions come up are more on grade level than they have been in the past. But then ultimately, as looking at it, if it was just because of the math, then we would have seen the same growth in reading. We would have seen that same jump in reading. So I think, and what I kind of came to and what the teachers kind of came to is they really do feel like this math program is hitting a lot of the right notes.
Okay, and then, so a related question about the reading curriculum. Is the program we're on the right program, or is it the method of teaching that is going to be modified here?
That's, so, like I said, the school-wide stuff is a little bit more open-ended, so it does give us more options and how to hit that. So yeah, we're looking at skills, we're looking at instruction, using the curriculum resources that we have available through school-wide, but we are also at a point too where the literacy curriculum is up for review next year. So now that we have experienced the things that we like with math, we now have a pretty good idea of what we'd be looking for when we audit the literacy program next year.
Okay, and then the last question was the math systems. When you make a curriculum shift, or any kind of shift or major change in anything, there's always some risk of losing something that you had. Is there anything, I mean, the scores are showing otherwise, but is there anything that, you know, a year plus into this that you're seeing that is a, I don't want to say deficiency, but area for improvement within the Eureka curriculum on the math side?
You know, I think that there's always room for improvement with a lot of the stuff that we do. So, you know, part of it is, now we're in the second year with that, keeping up and seeing, you know, was that an anomaly or was that legit? And from what the way that the math curriculum is designed, it does build on itself too. So I think that, you know, the major downfall was that, it was a little bit harder last year, and it still continues to be for the older kids this year, because the program assumes that they have a certain knowledge from doing the program when they were younger that they just didn't do. So we do see a little bit of a difference in the first through third scores that we do in the fourth and fifth last year. Curious to see if that is still the case this year, and how much of that, and a lot of the fifth and fourth grade teachers did feel like they had to do a lot of catching students up to get to stuff last year, where they don't feel like they have to do that this year. Because they feel like the students are coming in with that background knowledge that they can tap into to then build on the stuff that's happening now. But yeah, I think that right now we're very much in the monitoring phase of that year two, and that's why I appreciate continuing to have the coaching support specifically from the Eureka program that can help us with any pitfalls to keep an eye out. Yeah, awesome, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but just some really good comments is, you know, I so appreciate the growth in math, but then also looking at your focus for this year being so concise and so helpful for overall growth. And then just looking at the real, very precise SEL program and focus on that as we continue to see kids struggling with so many different things, and just seeing how that SEL program is being implemented and really being successful in seeing these positive results, because the end goal of having good members of society is definitely impacted most in that portion. So thank you for that focus, and thank you for how it's being implemented to you, from you and your staff.
Anybody else? Great, thank you so much. Let's see, next up is the Panorama Fall Baseline. Dr. Cohen, you have the floor.
It's always fun to follow Mr. Timmons' presentation, I tell you. Okay, so for this presentation, we've had many opportunities together now to talk about Panorama and get a good overview of the data collected and talk about the scores and the breakdown. This time I decided to structure it just a little bit differently and give you more of a deep dive into Panorama, so that in following Mr. Timmons and how he was talking about the scope and sequence of second step, similar with Rethink Ed at the middle school, giving you kind of a behind the scenes of what Panorama looks like as far as the data, what we're able to access and use towards MTSS and celebrations, both at the grade level, the building level, and in some instances, even at the individual data level. So this information is the same as last year. We had taken a team, our entire SEL department as a district, along with teacher representation, to shift some of the topics that we used in our Panorama survey in the spring. That was our baseline. We used the same surveys then in the fall, so we were able to compare from spring to fall this year. So this was not changed for the fall administration. Little bit of trouble. Some of these slides will look a little bit different this time, as I tried to give you a screenshot of truly what we're using to both collect the data, to look at things, and to make some instructional decisions. So what you see here is just a reminder for kindergarten, first and second grade surveys, they're teacher reported. Third through eighth graders, student reported. So for kindergarten, first and second grade, the data you're gonna see is all teacher reported. And I wanted you to see what some of the data looks like. Our data overall looks very similar from last year. So there's no big spikes or changes. There's a few celebrations that I'll point out in some following slides. But overall, from year to year, we're not seeing many outliers or changes in the data, which is good, because our data looks good. But if you look here for kindergarten, first and second grade, this data is showing how often, this question that is reported here, how often is the student able to control his or her emotions when he or she needs to? This is for our youngest learners. So this would be an area that we might think that they would need some extra support on. We would expect to support them, but you can see here what is reported is 79%. So in previous presentations, I would show you 79% favorable, which is what Panorama would say is a favorable response. I wanted to drill a little bit deeper here so you can see how they get those numbers and see how there's actually even more data that we're able to access. So they were able to pick, if you look, I'm gonna step away and talk about it. If you look here, you can see almost always and frequently, but you can also see sometimes. So this is the student's ability, according to teachers, to regulate their own emotions. And almost always and frequently are considered favorable responses to Panorama. But it's cutting out to sometimes. So I just wanted you to see that there is even more data that we're looking at when we're doing this that we would consider favorable. Additionally, we're able to break down the data into different subgroups. So you can see here there's ELL, we can do it by grade level, we can do it by gender, we can do it by building, so we're able to see all of that data as well. Some of these slides might be things that you've not been able to access or see, so I wanted you to have some familiarity with it. These are some ways we're able to analyze, collect, and use the data even deeper. This is self-efficacy, how much students believe they can succeed in achieving academic outcomes. Again, still according to teachers at the beginning of the year. One thing to note, we did push back our administration of Panorama this year as a response to hearing the teachers. Because kindergarten, first and second grade, we started later this year, teachers needed some time to get to know their kids before they completed the survey. So based on that, we did push back the administration window. So this is, it's not like they just got to know the kids within the first week we gave it. They just gave it the week of September 30th. So it's very recent data. But the nice thing you can see here is that in the spring with this same survey, they were scoring at 62%. And in the fall already, they're scoring at 61%. So it's showing that we're starting off really strong with our young learners. A little bit deeper into two other areas, self-management and social awareness. Self-management asks teachers questions about how focused students are in class. And social awareness asks how well students can consider the perspective of others and empathize, directly related to our SEL curriculum and skills that we're learning. Again, here under this data under favorable, quite focused and extremely focused would be considered favorable, which would have been 53%. If you bring in somewhat focused, you get up to 83%. So just so you can see how that data can change. For social awareness, we really see a pretty marked increase there from spring to fall for how we're starting at the beginning of the year. So students are definitely coming in ready to learn.
These are asked on a per student basis.
Yes, yes. This is a slide that shows some other ways that we're able to pull the information. So this question, this is 3rd through 5th grade, so the rest of the slides are on student-reported data. The question was, think about everything in your life right now. What makes you feel happiest? And these are some of the responses. The bigger the word, the text, the more students responded with that answer. So it really pops out at us. So it's really nice to see different things that make students happy. We're also able to see the same data student by student. This is anonymous. We're not able to drill down to which student responded this way, but we can use it for themes. So we can see student by student, and then we can pull it by themes to see. And from our perspective, it was nice to be able to see that they listed teachers, math, class, art, music as some main things of ideas of making happy. Sense of belonging is always a goal for us, for all of our students, that they feel a sense of belonging, and our staff, of course. So as we look at this data, it was great to see beginning of the year how many students already feel a sense of belonging. In particular, we were looking at this because we do have a number of newcomers who did take this survey. So we have a large number of newcomers, and we do have interventions designed at the buildings to support some of those. So we might have lunch bunch and some other interventions put in place. But right here, we can see that students are feeling a strong sense of belonging. Same question, digging down a bit more. We're able to, our MTSS and our SEL teams meet frequently. They're reviewing different factors such as maybe discipline, attendance, health visits. Are we noticing the students are going to visit the nurse at certain times of the day? Is there any extra conversations that we need to have with teachers just to get a better understanding of students' needs? We're also able to use some tools within Panorama that I wanted to show you. So in this question in particular, if we had any questions about a student or maybe a group, we might ask some of our social emotional providers, our social workers, or our psychologists to go in and do a whole group lesson if we feel like there might be an uptick in maybe first grade, for example. But as in addition to that, Panorama provides us a number of resources. So if we go in and we say, we notice that there's some needs in a certain level, we can click on any of these resources and it goes on and on with some different tips and techniques that either our SEL providers could do or our teachers could do. So just to see that resource.
So sorry, so like for these prompts that are already in there, like this database, when they're talking about the rating, and or is that who's using this? Is this across all Panorama users, or is this just specific to our school when they're doing this rating? Do you know?
When you're saying this rating.
Sorry, that average rating. Like who is using these as actual tools? Is this just our school, or is this across?
Anyone that uses Panorama has access to these.
Awesome.
This is how we look, to your point, in a larger scale. So we are able to compare our own scores from the spring. Again, different survey, different topics previously, but we are always looking at where do we fall in comparison to our neighboring areas and across the country, any districts that are using Panorama. So you can see, for example, for self-management, moving now into the middle school, this is just one snapshot of what we look like. So for self-management, some of the questions included, during the past 2 weeks, how often do you come to class prepared? Again, it's asking the middle schoolers to report out on this. Asking about how often they follow directions in class, they get their work done in a timely manner rather than procrastinating, how often they pay attention and stay focused during independent work time. So you can see for the fall where they fell, which is really nice and strong to see. Most of this data, depending on the survey, is, like I said, at the subgroup level. Again, we can compare between buildings, grade levels, small groups. We can also, for certain portions of our survey, really drill down to the individual level. This is an example of what this looks like at the middle school. So we do have this accessible across the board. So what our social emotional providers do in our meetings, along with administrators, and teachers have access to this as well, is we can pick. So for example, if we want to look at the students in the red or the yellow, if we click on that, all of the students will then show up that either fit under green, yellow, or red. Based on that, we can then validate it. Let's see their scores. We can see individual responses to the questions for some of them, and then take a peek and validate it with some other data. How's attendance going? Get information from the teachers. Are they seeming like they're engaged? Are they happy? Are there certain times of the day where maybe we notice that they need a little more support? It can be both for celebrations and for areas that they need some interventions. Mr. Mr. Timmons mentioned how second step is aligned to the CASEL competencies. Our SEL teams across the district are working very hard to also align their interventions. So at the elementary level, they're aligning their interventions to the CASEL competencies also. So if we notice social awareness, responsible decision making, that those may be areas, they're then aligning their small group interventions to those areas. We're able to look at those pre and post tests through second step as a data point for how our students doing with the curriculum as intended and any additional services being provided. Additionally, we receive data from staff and teachers. So the only difference between the staff and the teacher surveys is that there's an equity piece, same as last spring, added to the teacher surveys. And here is some takeaways for the staff and the teacher surveys. Staff reporting 100% of staff reported feeling engaged at work, effective, and a sense of happiness at work, which of course is our goal. They would like us to continue providing training on much of the wonderful technology that we're bringing into the district. And they do appreciate that. School leadership checking in often is always appreciated, and they mentioned that they feel supported. 100% of the teachers reported feeling happy and effective at work. 80% of teachers report feeling quite effective to extremely effective at responding to behavioral challenges. We should note that we are continuing our partnership with NSSEO this year. They're coming in monthly or every other month and doing full staff trainings at all 4 buildings to respond, to provide teachers additional tools for their toolbox for how to respond to any social emotional challenges, behavioral challenges, and maintain those connections as they see them. Teachers also reported they appreciate more opportunities for check-ins. They appreciate their school leaders. And they continue to ask that the administration be considerate of their time for planning and meetings, which is definitely
Lisa?
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yes.
You mentioned the reports are available some of the reporting or questions are available on a per student basis. Are those reports ever shared with parents or family, like to show growth? We get reports and sharing growth for math, for English beginning of year. Are there any questions that would be helpful to share out about growth, SEL growth during the year?
Currently, we're not using it in that capacity. We're really using it more through our intervention cycles to look for both areas of strength and celebration and areas overall for interventions needed. If we get to a point where we are really proficient with the data and feel that there's certainly celebrations, we absolutely would share celebrations. When students are in interventions, there's continuous and frequent communication with parents at that point. And we're working on building up the data collected through interventions. That information is all shared with parents.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Actually, so anonymous versus non-anonymous pieces. So which components are anonymous and which are not?
So I would have to do a little more digging to give you a very accurate response in that.
Just
but I can tell you when it comes to overall climate, sense of belonging, questions that entail more how is the student responding to school in that environment, it tends to be more by class, by grade level. But if it comes to how are they responding to situations or feeling about something, then we can drill down a little bit deeper.
Okay, because I was just curious about almost to Becky's point when we were talking about the individual responses when we had that slide that says if we want to dig down into that yellow and red zone. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of those questions would be personal and identifiable. Yes. Got it. Okay, thank you.
But I have one more question. Sorry. Do you think that we would get any additional data if the middle school teachers took the same survey about their students, like the elementary school. And where I'm going with this is a kid truly gonna admit I'm walking into class unprepared, knowing that their name is on this? I don't know if I would have when I was a kid. So would we get a more, and I don't wanna say that they're lying, because that's a harsh word, but would we get a more honest evaluation of the student body if we tallied teachers as well?
So Panorama is designed the way we're giving it. K-2 teacher report.
So we don't have a choice.
3A, not for Panorama, but what I will say is, as we're meeting, as the administration at the middle school and the teachers are meeting, and they have their grade level flips every week, and there's multiple avenues to be hearing both the celebrations and any concerns from the teachers.
Okay.
So I would say, I don't think we're missing information from the teachers because there are so many avenues and supports. Our SEL team at the middle school is frequently meeting and connecting with the teachers over there. And they have a system in place for SEL along with academic interventions to be capturing that information. So I don't think that there's holes with the information we're getting. I do always question, right, when asked, are you doing all your homework? As I would question my own children,
Sure.
I don't really doing all your homework. But I do think that we have other ways to validate that.
Okay, great. So we at NSSEO, we do pretty in-depth staff reporting as well. And that 100% number about staff reporting, feeling engaged work and feeling happy and effective, those all sound great, but I'm struggling a little bit thinking there's not like one unhappy teacher that's not feeling engaged. So I'm kind of wondering, just a little feedback, I'm questioning, maybe the questions aren't enough there.
And the staff one is completely anonymous. So, yeah.
But
I get your point, though.
100% of the staff does not answer this.
No.
So
We have a
that
good
could be
response
the
rate for
fallout,
that as well.
right? Because if you're disengaged, then you may not answer a survey such as this. So I would take it with a grain of salt.
I will
but-
say we have between 80 and 96% of staff, teachers responding to this. We have a good amount, but to your point, absolutely true, there are some that we don't hear. Not
Right.
necessarily.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm gonna just, yeah,
Utilize
that's
the-
okay, I'm gonna
utilize
utilize
the-
the seat so I
Absolutely,
can
go for
see
it.
the screen. That
Gotcha.
sounds fantastic. Patty, would you mind, to just progress the slides as we go? My portion is very short this evening. Typically, you have a balance of head ready, heart ready between Dr. Cohen and myself. However, moving the board meetings a little bit earlier this year to the second week of the month, we do not have all of the academic data yet from the state in terms of that state reporting period. So I'm just going to show a very brief preview as a reminder and kind of a appetizer for what's coming in November. So the end of the month is really when our school ratings for the year are released from the Illinois State Board of Education. So I wanted to take a minute just to remind the board how those calculations are measured. They do take a head ready, heart ready approach, which we very much appreciate within our district, that they emulate what we believe and what we truly value within the walls of River Trail School District 26. We do see a little bit of a shift in terms of that percentile value. So about 75% of the measures from the state look at that academic readiness and those academic indicators, while approximately 25% look at more of the school quality student success indicators, which we would refer to as that heart ready. This graphic should look very familiar to you. You've seen this over the course of the last several years, and finally the state has stuck with this for the last several years, so that's been kind of nice for us. However, I will tell you, in all of the meetings Jody's had over the course of the last few weeks, there is a change coming with school accountability from our new state superintendent in order to hopefully set appropriate benchmarks for students and not mislabel students as not meeting benchmarks, as we are the fourth most rigorous state in the country in terms of where those benchmarks are set. So that is coming, but for right now we have consistency in terms of where those measures are coming from.
On the next slide, last year you remember me speaking of student groups at the different schools. A student group is composed of 20 or more students in each of these categories at our different schools. If we don't have 20 students in a particular area, we do not get a score for that indicator. They have not yet released our student group information yet for this year. So that is why this screen right now is lacking data. I will bring that to you next year, or next week, the month, because it is important in terms of our overall summative designation, as you'll see on the next slide. So there are 4 summative designations that we could receive in River Trails: exemplary, commendable, targeted, and comprehensive. And that is where the student group factor comes into play. If we have any student groups performing under the target or underperforming student groups, we would fall into the area of targeted support or comprehensive support. Historically, in River Trails 26, we have fallen in the commendable area. We have not yet reached that exemplary benchmark. However, with all the work that our schools are doing, as you heard from Mr. Timmons tonight, I'm really hopeful that we are going to get there in one of these few years. We'll see what this year has to bring. The next slide is just a reminder for you that last year all of our 3 schools were commendable. Because Prairie Trails does not have any first grade students, they do not receive a ranking because kindergarten is not a compulsory grade. So you will not see a rating for Prairie Trails, but as we know here, the foundation that they build for our students is what allows our other schools to be so successful. So the following slide presents the timeline. You will see a release of the school report card on October 30th at approximately 9 a.m. Dr. Megerly will be sure to share that out in that Friday update that week to let you know where we're at. And then I will bring more specific details to the board on November 12th in terms of those designations, as well as our fall benchmark data as it relates to map testing and things like that. So, any questions from me on the accountability measures that will be coming soon?
I'm assuming that we get. So what happens when kindergarten does become mandatory in 27, 28?
We'll find out. We'll find out. Perfect. Yeah.
I'm just curious. As soon as you said it, I was like,
Anybody have any questions before you move on? Okay, hearing none. Up next is the multilingual staffing update.
That's me as
Is it
well.
still you? Yeah.
Yes. So I included a lot of information in your board book regarding our current wonderful situation that we are in our district in terms of welcoming new students into our buildings. It was a little bit of a surprise based on where we were last spring when the board likely remembers that we reduced our multilingual staffing by 1 because we just had not seen the number of increase in newcomer students that we were expecting. So in order to be fiscally responsible, we did make that reduction at that time. Well, the word got out, and this fall, we have seen over 22 newcomer students welcomed into our buildings because over the course of the last couple of days, since we published this information, we have welcomed at least 4 more students that I'm aware of from Jordan. So we are thrilled, we are blessed to welcome this diversity into our district. It is placing a hardship in terms of meeting student needs in specifically one of our buildings. So we are here tonight to ask for requesting additional staffing of 1 FTE, so essentially bringing back that staff member bringing back that position that we reduced last spring in order to support this need. So I know it's very small up there on the screen, but I know you have it in your board book in front of you. We just wanted to do some graphical representations to really show you where the newcomers are and how that has been impacting our buildings. And I wanted to explain a little bit behind that. So you'll see that Euclid and Indian Grove have welcomed approximately 3 students each. Prairie Trails Kindergarten has welcomed approximately 6, I believe that is now 7 or 8, preschool 1, and then River Trails Middle School 9, which has now become 11. The reason this is such a big impact on the middle school, you can see the data below there, is we have significantly less ESL endorsed staff at our middle school to help support students. We do need to align all of our language learning with ESL endorsed staff in their core classes whenever possible, and newcomers require additional support beyond that. I do not feel like this is a representation of anything we've done wrong in terms of staffing at the middle school, as our middle school numbers of multilingual learners has increased by about 40% since COVID. So we have seen just that in the demographic changes in our area, as well as the number of students who have exited multilingual services has decreased just due to some lapses or some interruptions in learning. So we are asking for the additional staffing to help support River Trails Middle School. We really have one teacher primarily responsible right now for providing direct service to our multilingual students, and other staff members who are supporting in content areas such as English language arts, social studies, science, those core and math, those core content areas. But we do need some additional support at River Trails. In my memo, I had a lot of different purposes and justifications and rationales as to why we feel this is best placed at this time. So at this time, we really just wanted to take any questions from the board and explain to any more depth if there are any questions.
So I guess and I'm sorry if I missed this while I was reading it. So will she be, or sorry, will the person, the new hire, will they be working in the same classroom as the current ML teacher, or is this going to be designated as a separate class for like newcomer?
That's a great question. So we have a service spectrum that we use to make decisions in terms of class placement across all of our buildings. In our middle school, we do have a sheltered English language arts section for our students that are falling below a certain score on the English proficiency test. Going into this spring or into this summer, we didn't have any students requiring that level of intensity of a sheltered English class. So we disbanded that class for this year, not needing it. So right now, our students that are coming in do not have access to a sheltered English language arts block. So likely the teacher, if we were able to find one, would be serving English language arts blocks for likely 6th grade, and then potentially a 7th and 8th grade combined class, and then in that additional 2 periods available would be pushing into other content areas to support our newcomers with content area instruction.
So I'm a little bit confused here. Are you asking for approval for this position, kind of giving us a heads up that it's coming?
So I was working with Mr. Berry on this, and the way we were approaching this is information saying, this is what we would like to do, and what we are recommending as an administration in our district. The next time you would see this would be in the consent agenda, where you would have, if we were able to find someone and hire someone, where you would vote on that hire. If I heard this evening that there's a lot of questions, or you're feeling like this isn't an appropriate way to go, then we would come back to you in November with a different proposal.
I can't speak to the rest of board members, but I'm fully supportive of you filling this job. My only concern is that if you find somebody next week, you gotta wait a month to get.
Understood. We do have a trimester turn coming in, kind of right around that time. We wouldn't want to change any students' schedules in the midst of a trimester, and especially newcomer students who have just adjusted to a learning environment. So the timing of this with November 12th is actually perfect for us in terms of that trimester turn. I think this is going to be a very hard position to fill, but our fingers are crossed, and we are very hopeful that we will find that unicorn out there.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure the board wasn't impeding that process.
Appreciate it.
So considering that this is just an information item, does anybody object to having them start the process? Great, and I'm in agreement with approval.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, next up is business services. Ryan, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is also just informational. Last fall, the board approved a 1-year extension on our student transportation services contract with Graham Prairie, with the understanding that we would go out to bid the following year, which is now. So this is just a tentative timeline of what we expect to see, just the information tonight. Officially going out to bid later this month, around the 24th. Opening bids later, right before the holidays for Thanksgiving. bringing back those bid information to the December board meeting, and then final approval in January. We were approved for an additional grant for more electric buses through the EPA. We're going to write in an alternate allowing the new bidder to potentially use that grant money or not, and that would be part of the information brought back once we receive the bids in December and then approved in January.
Anybody have any questions on the process? Yes.
I just have one. So we'll approve the winning bid on January 14th. And if that bid does include somebody that would take the grant and buy the buses, is that 17 days enough time for them to order the buses, or use the grant money that has to be used by the end of January?
The grant money that has to be used by, we basically have to either accept or decline the grant money by the end of January. So they've given us an extension based on the circumstances of going out to bid for that. But yeah, we don't have to use it or purchase any of the buses. Basically accept the grant if they were going to use it.
Anybody? Yeah, do you have, from a selection criteria perspective, I mean, this was driven in part from substantial cost increases that we have incurred over the past 5 years, but I also don't want to lose sight of quality, timeliness, and things like that. So do you have kind of maybe a pulse on just on the selection criteria? I'm not asking for something specific, but you're not, are you going for the absolute lowest price, or are you going for a balanced bid of somebody who can deliver at a good value?
Absolutely.
It's a rhetorical question.
The bidding requirements in Illinois have changed over the last few years, so we don't absolutely have to take the lowest bid. Obviously, if there's something very close, I think we've had a great working relationship with Granbury. The few months I've been here, especially working with Ms. Reyes, I think we value and appreciate that. And if something's close and, we know the service of one, we don't necessarily know the service of another. However, if they come out and beat them by 20%, it would be hard for me to bring a recommendation, with that amount of savings.
I'm excited to see what you come back with. Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yes. Okay, so I have been holding these cards in my wallet since the conference. And at the conference.
You had them before we did.
Yes, that's right.
We talked to Mrs. Johnson.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, we can move on.
Okay. And I took some notes when I talked with the people. And one of them, and I talked with First Student, Durham, Septran, and Grand Prairie. Okay? So, one of the things, Durham and Septran are the same company. Okay? Putting that on the record. One of the gentlemen also said to me, make sure when you're doing the specs, you specify what type of bus you want, electric or gas. So I guess when we do it, we have to, and diesel, okay? But what we have to do is, give us a quote for gas, give us a quote for electric, give us a quote for diesel, okay? The other thing too is, each of the gentlemen told me that you can go out for bid, but we kind of have territories. And if First Student is nowhere up here in the northwest suburbs, District 57, 21, 23, 214, if their first route is down in Itasca, you're going to be hard pressed to get them to come up here to do your school district. Well, I'm just throwing that out as an example.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm throwing that out as an example. I don't know what who's got what.
Okay.
But to keep that in mind, because Grand Prairie is all over the place here. They know the suburbs we're in, they know our routes, not our routes, but everybody's routes, et cetera. So it's just something to keep in mind that even if you come in and you tell me that there's a 20% saving for the guy who's down in Itasca, I won't go for it, okay? So just, like I said, I've been hanging on to these, waiting for today, so I could share this information at the time where it would be relevant to what we're talking about. So that's my input to this, and we want to go out for bid, okay, but I'll just have to see what comes in.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on, retirement contract for Mr. Whistler. Is there anything to report, or do we have the contract already that's been the board for?
Exactly, I think changes were made based on the last closed session meeting of the board. If there are any other follow-up questions, I can answer those, otherwise.
Well, let me get a motion in a second first for, to accept the retirement contract for Mr. Whistler as presented.
Second.
Is that Kim? That you? Okay, so Bianchini was motion and Fisper was seconded. Any questions, comments, or questions before we go to a vote? Yes, ma'am.
I will just let you know I'm not voting for it, not because I don't want him to retire, but I'm not in agreement with the terms of the contract.
Anybody else?
I'll throw out there that I really don't like the idea of healthcare being paid for the family 100% rate. Would like to see that practice left behind as the future rolls on here. But understanding he was hired with those benefits in place, and I'm in agreement with the contract. But I just want to put that out there.
Anybody else? Okay. Mrs. Johnson, could you please call roll? Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, hang on. It kind of, this is it, right? Okay. So,
When I was talking, I closed my Chromebook.
okay, Ronstadt,
Yes.
Friedland,
Yes.
I vote no. Bianchini,
Yes.
Camardo,
Yes.
Pfister,
Yes.
and Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is committee updates, NSSEO, Mr. Ronson, you are our representative.
Okay, so so first of all, a couple of attachments here. One of the things we've been kind of more immediately working on is just providing, regular standardized communication back to member districts. Continue to work on the strategic plan. I will say I have one piece that I'm putting up here just proactively, that there is a planned HVAC upgrade at Kirk that was originally planned at a budget of around $5 million that is coming in closer to 9+. We have managed to accumulate about 8.5 in commitments on the understanding, or the kind of concept that at least has been kind of tentatively agreed upon, that we come around with the business managers, that member districts contribute $1 million of that. So our portion of that's about $58,000. So that looks like an assessment. We're not asking for approval for that right now. Where the process is right now is we are, for NSSEOs, we're approving them to go out to bid to see if the prices are better, because there's such a variance there between the initial estimates and the new estimates for the HVAC system. But that's probably the biggest thing that's hanging out there. But I do think that on that topic that, I've been saying for quite a while here that there are some capital improvement needs at NSSEO that need to be addressed. And this is part of, some of the solutions that have been discussed with, between business managers and NSSEO administration to fund these things in a responsible manner over time to address critical needs. Any questions?
Are you saying that we're pitching in more for the building fund than what's in the budget?
It has not, it has been tentatively agreed upon by the business managers that that could be a funding model. So yes, that would be an above and beyond the approved budget. However, we're not spending that money yet because we don't know for sure based on the bids how it's going to come out. And the difference is part of that is how NSSU is funded is directly through the districts.
Right.
And we don't really carry, we have a reserve, but we don't carry a big balance and, we can't leverage debt and things like that. So yes, that would be a budget variance. And perhaps Ryan can help fill that in on that whole idea. I don't know how involved you've been specifically.
Well, I just want, so what you're saying is there's capital improvements that didn't make it in here, into the budget at the time. And now what'll happen is the school districts are going to be assessed another, I'll call it
An assessment.
yes, an assessment. And you were thinking it's $1 million per school?
No.
No, it's.
It's $1 million from all 8 member districts split across. the
Okay,
member
so let's
districts.
pretend ours is $50,000.
It's $58,000 right now,
Oh,
is the
okay.
approximate estimate.
But you don't, but we may not have to pay 58 because when you go out for bids, the bids may come in lower and we may only have to pay 38.
Yes, generally.
Kind of,
And part
yeah.
of the budget approved, roughly $5 million in capital expenditures,
Yeah.
which were going to be completely covered by existing funds. But because the estimate is so much higher, shockingly much higher, and I haven't quite gotten to the root cause of that, with the materials and construction, whatever, all the stuff they talk about. But the purpose of going out to the bid is to get a concrete number so that we can then bring back that number to them. So the thought process right now around the $1 million assessment across all 8 districts is based on somewhat fuzzy math at this point, that the current estimate of 9.5 will be closer to maybe that 8.5. But by the time we bring it to any member districts or have any guidance there, we'll have a concrete number, we'll have a bid. And we'll say, this is the bid. The way that it's being set up right now is that the business managers across all the member districts will have some kind of discussion about, yeah, this is in the ballpark. Of course, it comes back to us for final approval.
Okay.
Now, wait, when you say us, do you mean the NSSEO board or our board?
It's a little bit of both. So,
Because business managers don't have any authority to approve any of this.
this is where it does get, I think, we're into some new ground here, okay? Because as a owner of or a part of the co-op, okay, we are all equal members of that co-op. So based on our attendance and our contribution levels to various needs in this case, okay? So if, let's say that the NSSEO board says, okay, we've gone through this, it's $9 million, just for argument's sake, and instead of $58,000, it's going to be $70,000. That board can, with guidance, make approval, but it has to be, like, one board can't opt out of it necessarily, and this is where I'm still a little fuzzy. Like, we can't have, okay, 7 of the member districts are like, yeah, we're going to do that, but 1 doesn't. Part of being in the co-op is that
Well, it's a majority rule.
Yeah.
If you voted no.
Yeah.
If majority rule, whether you voted yes or no, the majority wins.
Yes. So again, this is kind of going, there's collaboration occurring with the business managers, there's trying to get to the final numbers, and also looking at a vehicle for perhaps future investments here. So this assessment may be a one-time thing, but as part of the strategic plan, we're looking at all of our options regarding facilities and starting to lay out a strategic plan on how to address those on a long-term basis.
Because like if you come to us and say it's going to cost us, $58,000, we would then turn to Ryan and say, oh, yeah, our budget's already been approved. So is there room in the budget to come up with $58,000? So that's where I would get him involved. But I don't, and this is no offense to Ryan, he's not elected. And he can advise us how to spend the public's money, but he can't approve it.
No, and I think that's what I said, that it's a collaborative engagement so that everybody's in kind of a general agreement to it. But yes, there is and I don't know how this is gonna work, okay, so maybe we need to discuss this better, because if the NSSEO board, let's say we say, hey, we're not spending that money, but the NSSEO board says, majority rules, yes, you are, does that force us to do so? I don't know.
I think it does.
I think it does
I've
too.
been around long enough. It does.
Because it's an assessment, that is
It does.
that is the cost of being part of the co-op.
But the question I want to, maybe you need to ask the NSSEO board is, since, let's say it goes up to 9 million or whatever the number was you threw out there, then there has to be a budget amendment. And we as a board get to see a different budget, I would think. I think, because I know with us, we would have to do a budget amendment. So
I think, yes, I will say that the NSSEO's budget has a lot more variability to it than our budget. Our revenue is relatively fixed every year. NSSEO's varies based on attendance and by demand. So, if they take in 10% increase if we take in 10% more students, we don't get 10% more revenue. If NSSEO does, they do get more revenue because of church tuition. And that's a blend of member or non-member district. So the budget is not, it's more reflexive to demand. The NSSEO budget is more reflexive to demand. That is an approved budget, but there is more variable. I don't know how to put it. But that's in terms of operations. Capital is different. Like a capital budget would absolutely require an amendment to the budget. But right now, we're just, the costs weren't nailed down accurately, so we're adjusting for that.
Okay, and you said something, and it kind of triggered something in my brain here. You said the strategic plan is looking at what facilities we need to.
The strategic plan, one of the known elements that is in need of attention is facilities. So what we are looking at is the strategic plan will guide the priorities over the next few years.
Priorities of what's going on in the building? Facilities wise?
The priorities of NSSEO going forward will include facilities.
You have a facilities assessment that you're weaving that into the strategy.
We have a facility, so what we did is we did a facilities assessment, which is what needs to be fixed or maintained to maintain those buildings. But the strategic plan, but that does not mirror what the need is, okay? So if there's need for different types of facilities or sizing or that align maybe with differences in programs, so based on population and things like that, it's not like, these aren't like typical schools in the.
Sure. Yeah,
You got it?
This assessment here, I thought that the strategic plan was going to be doing the assessment, but.
No. This is a separate piece.
That's a separate piece.
All I'm saying is that the strategic plan
I understand.
the strategic plan could drive the planning for, that may involve more capital expenditures.
Gotcha.
Of that.
Yes.
And that this, in tandem with this assessment methodology, may be something we model going forward. Right, go ahead, I know you've been on the top.
I think, as Mr. Ron had stated, I think originally the plan and the estimate came in at $5 million, and there was a decent amount of funding already in place. I think originally when they had that $5 million, almost $6 million estimate, they had already saved up to $3 million, and then they added a special assessment for out-of-district students and things to start paying for that. Later in the summer, after the June board meeting, the estimate grew to $9.5 million kind of suddenly. And I don't think that information was necessarily shared with the entire NSSEO board at any of the other following meetings. so when we had a meeting last week, I think it was kind of a surprise to some of the other districts coming around. So, you know, as Mr. Ron said, stated too, there's a special assessment that was assessed and has been mentioned and talked about of $1 million shared amongst all the member districts. At the last meeting with the $9.5 million project, they were projected to have that assessment assessed. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm saying assessment a lot. They were projecting to assess that $1 million in extra revenue over 2 different years, fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26. The project has moved to similar to how we've done Euclid and Indian Grove over 2 summers. So they would assess that $1 million twice to try and get full funding. Some of the business managers are a little reluctant still because the total revenue projections are approximately $1 million under that $9.5 million total project cost estimate. So we're trying to get a little more information on exact projections for revenues and expenditures and kind of that cash flow projection of what's going to happen for this project. We all agree that the project needs to happen. There was a long-range facility assessment done, I think approximately 2 years ago, and the Kirk HVAC system was #1 priority on the list. We all agree that's supposed to happen. I think we're just kind of taken back by the amount and why it changed so much from 5 or 6 million to 9.5 million. With the information that we currently have, you know, I don't think the administration would feel comfortable accepting or approving anything at this point until more information is brought forward from NSSEO for the project and a little further breakdown of the cost. Now I know there's a meeting tomorrow night, NSSEO's board meeting tomorrow night where the architect is supposed to come and provide information. They did officially go out to bid for the project today, and then the bids are being accepted or opened, I think, later this month. So they'll have that information at their November meeting, which will be before our next November meeting. So I think, again, you know, we're not comfortable right now, the administration, with approving anything, knowing that the project needs to be done, but just not having those specifics locked down just quite yet.
It was like that too. I don't think all of the funding options have been totally vetted out. I mean, we do have other methods of, and this kind of goes where it gets into some of the strategic planning that, you know, it's much more, NSSEO is much more complicated than a typical school district, okay? So they have, you know, there's such a staffing need. You know, the one that always gets me, just being a business person, is that if they're not fully staffed, they have a wait list of students that they're turning away, that they all member district students are a priority, and they get accepted. But we have a wait list of anywhere from 20, 30, 40 non-member students that pay upwards of 20% more in tuition than we do as member districts, and we're turning them away. And each student represents anywhere from $65,000 to almost $100,000 a year in tuition. So there's multiple ways here to fund this, but one of those methods, and I think from a member district perspective, as much as possible, our last resort is going to be an assessment, but we're also socializing and discussing kind of behind the scenes that this is what it might start to look like. And that's where we're at now. We haven't pushed any assessment yet. We don't have any immediate plans to do so. We're operating under the assumption that that could be a funding vehicle.
So if you have to come back to us to approve
58,032, whatever it is, I'm just making a little numbers up. That's not gonna happen for 2 meetings of the overall NSSEO.
I don't even know if it could happen. I mean, right now, based on what the bids come, we're all figuring it out. I mean, we would like to do the HVAC project sooner than later. Sure. We don't know if we have the funding to do it. It may break, and we're forced because that system is in good shape whatsoever. We may be in a position where we, can delay it and something, I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that, but I think part of where we're at right now is, collecting more information and exploring options.
Can you get details to Jody to include in her Friday update? For this week?
Yeah, I'll do what I can. Okay. But understand too, it's a developing, discussing, I'm kind of getting back into the how
No, if you could keep us in the loop, that she could include her update, that'd be.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a big deal for an SSEO to, get this plan put together, to align it with the strategic plan around program design, long-term facility needs, short-term facility needs. And I keep saying that we talk about our facility needs here, and I get it, but I mean, some of the, one of the schools in particular is not, you have, I walked around Euclid, and, Euclid's got that really nice, that BFR system, which allows you to adjust the temperature per room. Okay, we have one school that the hallways aren't air conditioned, so they're like opening and closing doors with kids that are having behavioral problems to try to equalize the temperature. The Minor and Kirk has just big AC units and heating units on the roof, and they don't have the ability to individualize temperature control. So in Euclid, it's about comfort, right? But in Kirk and Minor in particular, you have kids that physically cannot regulate their body temperature. Okay, so if the room gets too hot or too cold, they can have an increase, they literally, some of these kids can't sweat. Some of these kids can't say, I'm cold. And, there's definitely a need. And we're looking at systems at Kirk that are more in alignment with what we have here now than a BFR system, because we're trying to be budget conscious. So, but from a strategic sense, we're trying to also bring some equity and some planning into it, so we can bring all of those things together to make good long-term, plans. So sorry, because I'm board president, I got all kinds of detail on this. I can run for hours, but
Okay.
hope that updates everybody.
Yes, thank you. Next up is the President's Report. We've got a lot of events coming up. As Mr. Timms alluded to, we have on the 11th, Pizza Night here at Indian Grove. On the 15th, we've got board self-evaluation, which is going to be held at Prairie Trails. So please make sure that's on your calendar. On the 21st, Prairie Trails Middle School is kicking off their concerts, orchestra concerts at 6:30. November 7th and 8th, Indian Grove Donuts with Grown-Ups at 7:45. November 8th, Euclid Bingo Night at 6:30. Swimming back there is November 4th, Parent-Teacher Conferences. There's no students in attendance those days. On November 5th, no school, all buildings are closed for Election Day. And our next meeting is on November 10th. Our regular board meeting is on November 10th at 7 o'clock at the middle school. We're also going to be sharing information on III at that meeting. And one of the things that we want to let you know is our 2024 Resolutions Committee has announced their resolutions, which will be voted on on our delegate at III. So the way we're going to handle it this year is Jody, you pretty much in her update, is going to send out a Google form that will allow everyone to vote ahead of time. So then what we'll do at the November meeting is only stuff that we don't overwhelmingly agree on. So if something is 5-1 or 6-1, 7-0, there's really nothing to discuss. We all are in agreement, we can blow through that. So it's just stuff that we don't necessarily overwhelmingly agree as a board in one way or another. So hopefully that'll kind of alleviate the time that's spent reviewing that.
I would caution Jody, we are not voting. We can't
Correct.
vote. We were a consensus.
Yes, it's strong. Correct.
It will be an identification of any questions that we have.
Correct. So what we will need though is Jody and Patty and I are going to develop the due date for that, because we need to know how much time to put on the next So those absolutely have to be completed before I meet with Jody and Patty on the next agenda, so we know how much time that's gonna be spent discussing. Guessing how much time is gonna be spent discussing. We also still have the Board of Education Community Engagement Google spreadsheet. Please make sure that you're signing up for events as well as our RTEA board dinners, which have come back, which we thank the RTA for. It's been a great opportunity to meet as organizations. And that's it for President's report. Next is policy 2, subset 140, communication to the board. We received 2 emails anonymously from an organization called Company Knowledge. Those were both responded to accordingly. And we had a parent, Aaron Cullen, email us as well. Those emails were forwarded to Dr. Gregory to address. Patty Reyes also had some FOIA requests that she took care of. Thank you. Well, Ryan helped too, and Jody helped. Those were big team effort there, so thank you for all that. Next up is future topics. We have our self-evaluation on October 15th at 5 p.m. at Prairie Trails. We will have a light dinner for us, kind of a working session, and then we're going to go into closed session at 5:30 and meet with our IASD representative. If you have any kind of recommendations, dietary restrictions or anything, please let Patty know so she can make sure we don't get anything that's going to make anybody sick. Finally, our North Cook Division dinner, which was held last Monday, it's going to be held on March 4th in 2025, and I would really love it if everybody could save that date because we'll get our District 26 board governance recognition that night. It would be awesome to have all 7 of us there at least. So please mark that on your calendar. Love to have you guys there. It's also great to network with other boards and see some of the other knuckleheads like ourselves who have to go through this. You speak for yourself. Yep, no doubt, absolutely. Does anybody have anything for future consideration? Okay, hearing none, we do not have a closed session tonight, so I would like to entertain a motion in a second to adjourn our meeting at 8:56.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Friedland, second by Ronstadt. Could you please call roll?
Camardo,
Yes.
Disturbed,
Yes.
Grimpy,
Yes.
Ronstadt,
Yes.
Bianchini,
Yes.
I vote yes, and Friedland.
Yes.
Motion carries to adjourn.
We're adjourned at 8:56.
Alicia, did you want to report on something? You're the only one who didn't get up. I